Hey everybody, it is day 9. It's also 9/11. And I try not to dwell on like negative anniversaries, so to speak, just because I feel like we should celebrate the positive parts of our lives, but it's hard not to think about where you were that day and the feelings that come along with it and how far we've come or how far we haven't come. And so I thought I'd tell you my little story and where I was on 9/11. For those of you that maybe were so young that you don't remember, is that possible? Or that you were just kind of in your childhoodness? I think everybody still felt it no matter what. Um, I was at work. I was in a job that I used to travel all the time, and like I was in a different city every week, and for some reason my trip had gotten canceled. And I lived in New York. I live in upstate New York, so it's not like I lived in New York City, but thankfully my trip had been canceled. I think I was supposed to go to Milwaukee that week, and I was just sitting at my desk at work, and I was listening to the radio, or I turned the radio on, and I heard them say something about a plane, and I was like, what are they talking about? And I worked for a software company that, it's kind of hard to explain, but they would push news content via the software to our clients. And so I got up out of my desk and I walked over to the newsroom, and everybody was there in the company. I'm like, why didn't somebody come get me? Watching the televisions, and I kind of just sat and watched with them. And I don't think we moved from that spot for a couple hours. I remember when the second plane hit, I was walking over to the newsroom when the second plane hit, so I didn't see it. But I remember hearing the, oh my God, and we sat and watched. As we were watching, I remember one of my coworkers came rushing in saying he was leaving because his brother-in-law, his wife's brother, had an office on the 81st floor, and he was going home to be with his wife, which made it that much more real. Plus, the company that I worked for, we had many clients. I'd been in that building before, the Tower 1 before, with clients, and yeah, so all we could think about was them and what was going on. And I remember hearing someone say, oh my God, the building is falling, and seeing the smoke kind of rise as it was falling. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's just smoke, because I just didn't want to believe it. And we all just kind of sat there in shock when we realized that's what it was. They sent us home for the day, and I believe that me and a few of my coworkers just went out to lunch because we didn't want to go home and be by ourselves. And we sat there. It was like a sports bar kind of thing, and we watched the coverage, and then decided probably we should at some point get up and go home. And I still didn't want to, and so I drove to the Red Cross, and which I guess a lot of people had that same idea, because I thought the only thing I could do is give blood. And because so many people had gone, which is just such a cool thing, there were so many people waiting to give blood, and it was kind of a cool atmosphere, and it was a place where we could talk about it. I think I ended up on the nightly news because the news crew showed up and interviewed me, and I spent most of the day at Red Cross because it felt, you felt like you were doing something. And I just remember going home and not wanting to go to bed, because one of the things I left out, I don't know how I did that, but before I even left work, I was frantically calling my dad and my mom, because my brother lived well, he lived outside New York City, but he worked in New York City at the time, and right down in that area, and we were frantically trying to get a hold of him, which we did finally. But it was one of those days where we lost colleagues. Thankfully my friend's brother-in-law, he made it out, but I have many friends who had folks that did not make it out, and it was a hard day. And I remember the first day I had to fly, once they finally lifted the travel ban or the flying ban or whatever, and I was sitting in the airport, and I was never scared to fly before, and I remember sitting there in the airport, and I was thinking about what they said. The terrorists said to the control tower, they said, "We have other planes." And all I could think about was, we have other planes, we have other planes. And for some reason and I started to cry. But once I cried and kind of just felt it, I got on the plane. I was on the first plane out of that city after the travel ban. And I was okay, because I figure if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And what am I gonna do? And it changes everything. It makes you appreciate more. It makes you realize that things aren't as a big a deal as we sometimes make them out to be. But anyway, this was very long. I apologize that it's long, but I just want to share my story. And maybe you guys want to share your story below. I love you all. Thanks for watching.